There we go. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, if you can hear me.
I can. I've never done this before, so you get to be my guinea pig.
Okay, great. So if we screw this up, it's all my fault.
Yes, I like that.
You can blame Canada.
I'll blame Canada for something.
Yeah. I mean, we blame the United States for everything else, so you can...
All right, I'm going to do a real quick intro, and then we'll just kind of get into it. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. Just going to put my phone on silent. Everybody knows not to call me.
Yep. Oh, I was doing the same thing, actually. Welcome to Single White Female, a podcast about relationships, self-improvement, spirituality, and issues of the day. I am your host, Jennifer Williams, and today we are speaking with Henrik Langer, a German citizen who moved to Canada in 2008. Henrik is a hydraulic design technologist. Essentially, he makes sure that the melting snow flows nicely without causing floods. Henrik also has a small photography business on the side. What he says about that work is, there's nothing better than to know that I captured a memory for someone and that my work might end up on somebody's wall. He has also volunteered a lot of photography work for charities and nonprofit organizations, which put his work into a few magazines. Henrik really enjoys yard work these days. Mowing grass is like meditation for him. Handgun shooting is also a hobby, but their indoor range was closed down due to environmental problems, so that's in hibernation at the moment. Henrik is involved in firearms safety. After moving to Canada, he was interested in hunting, so took a so-called hunter safety course. He also took the required firearms safety course for rifles and handguns and found something that he liked, IPSC shooting. He was curious how difficult it could be to become a firearms safety instructor, so inquired with the Canadian Firearms Program, and all of a sudden, Henrik was enrolled in an instructor course. He's taught those courses since 2017, and they are mandatory in Canada to buy, own, or use a firearm. He says it's a lot of fun, and he meets a lot of interesting people, and every course is different. Lastly, Henrik is on this planet to make people happy. He says, if you are nice to the world is nice to you. Nobody gets out of this world alive anyways. Thank you for providing that information for me. I just wanted to start out by saying thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
And we haven't talked or seen each other, I want to say, since like maybe early 2000s?
It was 2001, Alicia's and Steve's wedding.
Yeah, that's so crazy. That was 21 years ago.
Yeah, oh, the last Facebook message I got from you was from 2008.
Oh my God. That's so crazy.
But I follow you closely on Facebook, and it's really interesting what you're doing there. It's because... Pardon me, but you seem like one of the more normal Americans to me.
Yeah, I am curious kind of from your standpoint, what you think, but we'll definitely get into that. Do you want to maybe just tell everyone kind of how we know each other and kind of, or how we came to be in the same world?
It's been a long time, probably longer than some of your listeners are actually alive. It was in 1996. I don't know if you remember that. My army buddy, Max Vogt, took me to Blair, Nebraska. And this is where I met Max was an exchange student with the Blair High School, and I was his army buddy, and I just tagged along for one summer, and he addicted me to Nebraska for some reason. I don't know why, but anyways, this is how I met you, Jennifer, and all the other guys. So then I was even at the wedding. I was a groomsman in Steve and Alicia Loftus's wedding, and actually that was the last time. That was in 2002. because I remember I was so many times random checked in 2002 after 9/11. I almost got in trouble because I told this one guy, this is not mathematically random anymore. And he got angry at me. Yeah, and ever since then, like we had just, I think on MySpace, we were friends. And when that was cool, I don't remember.
I don't think I even had a MySpace account, did I?
I don't know, but MySpace was the first social media where I met all the old American friends again while I was still in Germany. So yeah, and now I see that you were actually very passionate about the last incident that happened there, the last big gong show, I want to call it. And yeah, this is really interesting.
Yeah, so
it's great. It's great, actually. I just heard in the news there's something happening. I didn't really hear what's going to happen. So,
yeah, we'll get to that for sure.
Yes.
I did screenshot a couple things from that. News that broke today. So today we're talking about just the gun issue, essentially. And you have a unique perspective because you are from Canada and you are a firearm safety instructor. So you have a lot of thoughts about how Canada handles the gun issue, and then kind of your perspective watching America and all the mass shootings that we are going through daily. So I know I kind of rattled off a bunch of stuff in your bio, but can you just real briefly in your own words, tell me what your background is that informs your viewpoint on guns?
Well, like I said, I got into this hobby pretty much by accident. I took the hunter safety course that you have to take in Canada. If you want to go legally hunting, you have to buy so-called deer tags. And for that, you have to take a day course. The same instructor was a firearms instructor. I took these courses. And over time, I got more into firearms in general. And then I became an instructor. And ever since then, I'm really informed about all the gun issues because I have to be on top of this because people need me as a source of information sometimes. I got text messages at Christmas time where somebody had issues at the dinner table about some gun questions, and I had to answer them. So I am following everything pretty close. Plus, I'm also, through work, I'm involved a little bit with safety. I want to make sure that whatever we do in our life makes us all come home in one piece. It doesn't matter if you work, if you shoot, if you cut your grass, whatever. It's not rocket science to be safe. And I'm very picky, and people make fun of me sometimes about that.
Well, I mean, you would think we're in a third world country, like we're in a war zone daily, because it happens so often.
Well, this is the thing. Mass shootings don't happen here. We had 2 significant mass shootings, when you want to call it that, in the last 32 years. The first one that's still being used by some people as a political issue was in 1989 at École Polytechnique in Quebec, where one person shot a few, I think 10 or 15 women because he hated women, and it was like an engineering school for ladies, and he killed them. And there's still a big lobby from survivors from that who are still fighting firearms in general. And then 2 years ago, we had this shooting in Nova Scotia. I don't know if you heard about that. There was a guy who was driving around with a fake police cruiser, was killing people. Now it comes up, for example, that's a different story, but it was a lot of police mistakes that happened there.
Gotcha.
So, but
Go ahead. I was just going to say, it's interesting that you mentioned that first shooting, the guy hated women, because that's one of the correlations between these mass shooters is that they're a lot of times in their history, there's domestic violence. And so that kind of directly connects you to misogyny and toxic masculinity, and how, men sort of carry out their anger towards women. And, that's a whole other topic, but I just found it interesting that was one of the 2. Not surprising. Mass shooting.
Yeah, but those were the biggest ones. And I just heard the numbers today in the news, what in the States this year alone.
Now, do you define mass shooting in the same way that we do, where it has to be, I think, 3 or more fatalities?
Right now there is some political aspects happening here, and the government is talking about shootings in general. There is gang shootings in Toronto, for example. We don't have these, not that I'm aware of, but it would be in the news, where people walk into a crowded place and start popping. And, this is not happening here. But the reason is also, I think you'll bring this up in a little bit, it's not as easy to obtain a firearm here in Canada. Not as easy as you think it would be. And we don't have this culture of you have to defend yourself from everyone and everything. There's a little, and I even see this as a German, who grew up with no gun firearms culture at all, because the first time I touched a firearm was in the army, and I thought it was the last time I touched a firearm. And but after that, nobody cares for hunting in Germany because it's the king's privilege. It's a very expensive sport. So yeah.
Oh, okay. In Germany. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a difference. So
that's what I think that's really interesting to talk about too, just from the perspective of Canada and Germany, because even looking, we'll get into a little bit like the politics, but even with the NRA, which is one of our most powerful gun lobbies in the country, and all the money they donate to keep gun laws off the books, their origins didn't even start, from defending, the Second Amendment. Their origins were from the sport of gunsmanship and marksmanship, and the game of, or the sport of it. So same thing, but I think it was probably the 70s. I don't want to be quoted on my actual history, but the tides turned, and they needed a new way to bring in members, and they needed a new way to expand their association. So they started, gearing all of their messaging towards the Second Amendment and the right to own a gun, as opposed to how it started. And it's kind of gone from there into this massive, political issue. And I guess my point is, when I kind of bring that up, is it is so tied to identity here. Whether you're a gun rights advocate or not, it's all like identity politics. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, coming from Canada and Germany.
Yeah, the thing is, and that's also a lot of these, what I'm saying is my personal opinion, and a lot of people share them, but there's also the other people. My opinion is, only because you can doesn't mean you should. So if you have the right to bear arms, that doesn't mean that you should bear arms. I always come up with, one of my gun courses, I come up with a stupid joke. The Constitution was written on a hot day. Everybody was wearing long sleeve shirts. And this one guy said, I have a right to bear arms. And the one scribe says, okay, let's put it in there. So, and
that's a terrible dad joke.
Yeah, I know. Hey, but my students always laugh about it. But Canada doesn't have a right to bear arms. And my opinion about the Second Amendment is that the United States as a country has a right to a regulated militia, which means a militia is something that's a group of people who get together to defend the country from enemies, near or far. And this is what it means. It doesn't mean an armed population. Switzerland has a militia. Switzerland has this thing where young men go to serve for a couple of months. Then they get their rifle home, their military rifle, and a pack of ammunition. And in case there is war happening, they have to be ready to fight. Those are like armed citizens, but they don't use it to go robbing or whatever. They are aware that these rifles are there only to defend the country, for nothing else.
So how do you feel about limiting the number of guns someone's allowed to have, or what type of gun someone is allowed to have?
I don't want to say type of gun, because People always, especially politicians, use the word assault rifle pretty fast. The AR-15 was actually invented as a sport rifle. It was a rifle. It was a sport rifle before it became military. Then the military picked it up, realized, oh, that's a pretty neat gun. So they modified it for their use, and then they made the M16 and the M4 out of it, which is still, they're really nice firearms. Never changed for like 70 years, since the 50s. But because they are so convenient and easy to use, they give this feeling that these are assault rifles because it doesn't need much to use them. And they're so easy to use, so easy to reload. You don't have to learn much. The amount of guns to own, there's people who collect firearms. They don't even use them for shooting. These people would be a little bit infringed on their right to own firearms, or their privilege to own firearms. The style, like the AR-15 would be a perfect hunting rifle, but they are prohibited in Canada now, and because it's so nice and compact, you need one gun, one firearm is enough to do a lot of damage to anything. If you have 50 firearms, that doesn't make a difference. It's the person behind it, and actually what's up here that is more important than the amount of firearms, the style of firearms. If the person who's using the firearm is not really there, that's the issue, the mental health issue.
So you bring up a couple things I want to talk about. The first one is, what is your feeling that America has so many guns in circulation, 400 million compared to the next country being India, I think, with only like 71 million in circulation.
1 billion.
Does that play a role? Because they're just so easily accessed. Does that play a role in your mind?
Well, this always gives me the feeling if there is so many firearms in the United States, where are they? This is my question, because I hear from people like, oh yeah, I was in the States and this one guy, he had a pistol here and a revolver in his door and then he was still carrying. I'm always thinking this is overkill, like I said, because you can doesn't mean you should. If nobody knows where these firearms are, there is no reason to limit firearms because, like, hey, it's impossible. That train have left the station a long time ago to regulate maybe that. But you can't regulate something like this. It's impossible because people always find a way to get what they want.
Well,
legally or illegally.
That doesn't even address the ghost guns that are now popping up, which is really scary.
We have the same issue here. Now, the Liberal government wants to freeze the sale, import, and trade of handguns within Canada, which would only affect legal gun owners. That does nothing to all those smuggled in. 90% of the firearms in Canada that are used in crime are smuggled in from the States. So, and they're illegally distributed on the streets of Toronto or Montreal or I don't know, like these urban centers.
Do you think that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do you think that increasing penalties for having a gun that's not licensed to you would help that at all? Or
yes, absolutely. Because if I'm scared to do something stupid with something I'm not supposed to have, well, it's the punishment is always a little bit of like a mind game. Like if you do this, like as a kid, we tell our kids do this, otherwise you don't get dessert or whatever. And if you know that you don't get dessert, you don't do stupid things. And this is another thing here in Canada. They want to lower actually the penalty for illegal gun use, which is, in my opinion, totally stupid, because they say we don't want too many Indigenous and Black people in jail, which in my mind says, so you're assuming all these gun crimes are done by this people, this kind of people. Ugh.
Yeah, like put a standard for the right reasons, kind of.
Yeah, but penalties. I mean, you can penalize as much as you want. Everybody has to be in the same boat of what they're doing with what they have in their hand, like a firearm. Like, I don't want to go too far ahead, because in Canada, you have to have a license to buy a firearm. You have to go through a long process of obtaining that firearm. You can't just go into a store and say, hello, one rifle, please. Here's money. Goodbye.
What is the process? Can you explain that?
Okay, the process is, let's say, you want a firearms. You have to take a course through me. The minimum age is 12. Children from the age 12 have to take this course. I teach everything about safe handling of firearms, how to choose ammunition, what to do when something goes, when there's a malfunction. It's safe handling of firearms, then safe storing of firearms, how you store firearms safely. That is very highly regulated here in Canada. You can't just put them under your bed and leave them there. Transporting firearms when you're done with your hunting or shooting activity. How do you transport a firearm back to your house? So you take that course. It's 8 hours for a rifle. If you want to go hunting for a rifle. If you want to buy a handgun, you have to take another course. You have to listen to my stuff again for 8 hours, where I teach again safe handling, safe storage, which is a bit more complicated for handguns, because they want to be more safe. Okay, then you pass the course. You get a so-called course report that has to be sent to the RCMP, our federal police here, the police force, not like the FBI. Like, they're like the real police. They have cops and everything, like patrol officers and everything. And they look after that. It's a federal thing. This course is the same all over Canada. You send in 6 pages of paperwork, where you have to say, if you're married, you have to name the name of your spouse. You have to name 2 references, like 2 people who can say, yes, this person is okay to have a firearm. You have to check off if you committed a crime at any time in your life, like a firearms-related crime or like a violence thing. Then you mail this in with a photo and some money. Then they take this, they get this letter, they put it on a pile for 3 months. It sits there. Nobody touches it. After 3 months, they open the letter, they look at it. Then they start calling the spouse, the references, the 2. They ask, is this person legit to have a firearm? Then they do a very deep criminal record check. I learned from the chief, like from our staff sergeant here, our police chief, that there's different levels of criminal background checks. But the one for the firearms is really, really thorough and deep. That takes another 2 months. If you pass all this, they send you 2 months later, you get a card in the mail that gives you the right. Then you have the privilege to buy, own, and use firearms and ammunition. And it expires every 5 years. You have to reapply for it every 5 years, just to make sure that you're still alive. And then you're registered. And it's funny, because I didn't know this. Like the RCMP, our police here, when they pull you over, they actually see on their computer that if you have a firearms license or not. Not that it matters when you get caught speeding, but it's just information because they have it. They can see it, and that's what one police officer told me. Well, and I'm always telling my students, if you don't screw up, you don't lose that privilege. It really needs a lot to really lose that. And you really, really, really have to screw up things in your life. But Another thing, the police computer goes over every gun owner every day, scans it if you had contact with the police. And you're like under scrutiny daily. And this is what's missing in the States. Sorry to say it.
Yeah, no, to me, that's common sense, because you're dealing with a weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be, that's kind of what, I talk a lot about, yes, we talk a lot about rights in this country. We don't talk near enough about the responsibilities that you incur as a citizen being a part of this country and inhabiting those rights. It always comes with responsibilities.
Of course.
And so you have to prove your worthiness. You're not just born and then all of a sudden you're guaranteed. I mean, you have the right to a gun. Just like a 16-year-old finally earns the right to a license to drive a car. A car can be a weapon too, if you don't know how to operate it properly. So you have to go through a whole process, right?
Exactly. And then you have to make sure that you don't screw up. If you make a boo-boo, you have to pay. You get penalized in one way or another.
Right.
So, no, and what was I going to say? With this, I give you an example. I'm an instructor. I'm under special scrutiny there. We have every province has a so-called chief firearms officer who's overlooking all the firearms program. He's overlooking. It's mostly a senior police officer, and me as an instructor, I pop up on his screen if something happens. I got pulled over one time because they mixed me. The cop thought I was somebody else. And he pulled me over, and I said, "What? I wasn't speeding at night." And he apologized. "Oh no, sorry, I thought you were somebody else." And he let me go. But he, of course, driver's license, insurance. Next morning, I get an email. What happened there last night? So the chief firearms officer of Manitoba already saw it on his computer that I got stopped for nothing, but the report wasn't in or something. I just popped up in the police computer.
Right.
So I just explained it to him, and that's about it. I mean, not even for speeding. I mean, yeah. But this is how much we are under supervision from the government, from the police, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that a lot of our citizens would have issue with that too. Surveillance thing's a big one.
Same here. People complain about that here too. Nobody needs to know what rifle I have. Blah, 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 blah. Rifles are actually not registered here in Canada. You can buy them. Okay. Now they came up with a law that the gun stores actually have to keep a record, a record list of the serial number and everything and who bought it, which is, for some people, a gun registry. They had one here until 25 years ago, and it failed miserably. It was a big money pit. It didn't work. Handguns are registered. Handguns when you have a handgun, you can only take it to a gun range and back. You can't carry in Canada.
So there's no carry laws?
What's that?
There's no carry laws?
No.
Open carry?
I think there's one person in all of Canada that has this thing, and that's somebody who's not disclosed. You can't carry firearms unless it's for if you work for a security company or something. Then you can carry, but you can't just take it with you because you feel unsafe.
Wow.
And, and if you want to you can't just go wherever you want. You can only go to a gun range and back. If you want to take a handgun somewhere else in a gun range, you have to call the RCMP and ask for a so-called authorization to transport. And then they give you a little hall pass, if you want to call it that you can go. In case you get pulled over, something happens, and they find the gun in the car. Oh, it was all legit. So, yeah. That gives me actually a good peace of mind because not everybody's armed here, to be honest.
Right. So that kind of leads me into the mental health aspect, because that was the other thing you mentioned. Can you speak to what Canada does as it relates to mental health and gun ownership?
Of course, they do a mental health questionnaire with you. If you are suicidal, if you have anger issues and all these things, of course you can lie about everything. Right. In my course, for example, I have one slide where I bring this up, mental health. And I always say, this is the slide where it gets really quiet in the classroom. Because we're now in an age where we can, at a time and day and age, where we can talk about mental health. You don't have to suck it up anymore. Nobody has to suck it up anything. You can talk about what's going on in
Right.
your life. And I bring this up. It's that if you or somebody you know has something going on in their life, offer them the help. Take the firearm away from them. Offer them, put them in my gun cabinet. I offer the people that you can call me, you can get my business card, you can call me anytime. I take your firearm. I give you a receipt for it. Because if you really want to do something to yourself, think about how I'm always over dramatic. I said, like, this won't be an open casket funeral. And so I'm getting a little bit out of hand here, but there is mental health. Health is supervised here. Like, you have to say that you are at least every 5 years. You have to mention that you are still capable of. I don't want to say capable, but that you are not affected by mental health issues and still have the right to have firearms. Nobody will scold you if you hand in your firearm. Let's say if you would do something that I said, like, you know what, I gave my gun to my friend because I think I might do something silly. So, sorry, what were you saying?
Is suicide as big of an issue in Canada as it is in the U.S.? I imagine it must be, given, but I guess I don't know.
Numbers. I just know that the most firearms injuries are actually a result of suicide, not of one-on-one. So that's, I don't know, excuse me, I don't know any numbers, and but as far as like what I hear from in my Manitoba here in my province, it's not a plague or whatever you want to call it. It's not a, like, of course there's suicide, but it's not very common. Not that I have no numbers.
It's not an epidemic.
Pardon me?
I said it's not an epidemic like it is here.
Yeah. Not really an epidemic. No. It's been like with COVID here, with that stuff. This is a very rural area where I live. COVID hit, but probably not as hard as in the urban areas. The farmers still had to do their work. We got our work done here. Like, it's when COVID hit a lot of people's mental health, mine included. Like, I didn't even know how stressful it could be. Like, I got paranoid when somebody got too close to me. So
that probably doesn't help get used to being spread out from people being more rural, and then have that.
Yeah. But this is something that they can keep. Actually, I got so used to, like, stay away from me. It's all nice. Like, stand 2 feet away. It's fine with me.
So, what do you think about the argument that Americans make about, because that's a lot of times what happens when we try to bring up solutions to the mass gun shooting problem, is, they want to kind of distract over here rather than implement stricter gun laws. They want to talk about mental health, and they want to throw the problem at, it's always the scapegoat. It's a mental health issue. I don't even want to talk about how the same party that is anti-gun laws is also the same party that never implements anything that helps people out with mental health. That's a side note.
Yeah.
But I think mental health is an issue globally, not just in America. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's like, I know, like, for example, if we come up with COVID again, I know how it hit Germany too, how people were affected by COVID there. And Germans like to come up with laws for everything. So there were so many laws implemented during COVID that people really thought, like, this is like back in the 30s here. We can't do anything without getting followed by the police. People got citations because they just took the garbage out and stuff like this. And people were scared. And and mental health is now, like I said before, it's even before COVID and before, it's now a topic that we can talk about. We see this, they're completely off guard here, but war veterans, PTSD. Like you probably knew some, like I knew some old guys Germans who fought in World War II and were never allowed to talk about their experience. Mm-hmm. You probably met some American heroes that were praised, but they probably saw things that a 20-year-old was not supposed to see. And now when you have modern war veterans, they come back and they get mental health right away. These issues are now addressed. They don't have to suck it up anymore. And I hope that the governments actually learn that if we address them early enough, like with every disease, if you want to call it a disease or illness, it's an illness. Eradicate it as soon as you can. I personally had talking about mental illness. I had so many skeletons in my closet, and it didn't need much. I didn't need much to finally address them, and all of a sudden get rid of them. Pretty much, it wasn't rocket science. Mm-hmm. Like it just needed to talk about one topic, and all of a sudden, like, oh my goodness, I should have done this 25 years ago. Easy as pie. And there's people out there who have way worse than me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mental health is a serious issue in this country. And I mean, there's a whole gamut of issues around mental health. One being, are we supporting our veterans? And I don't think we're doing enough personally, but that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is just making sure that every single citizen has access to mental health if they need it. And that's a massive problem here. And then another issue is, I do think that suicides by gun are definitely a mental health issue and need to be addressed. But what about mass shootings? Because again, you don't have mass shootings in Germany. You don't have mass shootings in Canada. You still have mental health issues.
It's interesting that you bring this up, because every time something like this happens, they say, oh, the shooter was mentally, it was mental health. It was mental health. You can't blame everything. But this is like, seriously, if this happens all the time, if it's always mental health, mm-hmm. then you know where the problem lies. And to come with the word health, and we have free healthcare here in Canada. That means you get at least basic healthcare. I can go to every hospital and say, can I talk to someone for free? I might have to wait sometimes, but there's always someone, like there is free resources for me.
Do you feel like there is adequate access and enough mental health therapists and experts out there to serve your entire community?
Absolutely not. But I don't think anywhere on the planet there's enough people to deal with mental health, because mm-hmm. it is so drastically underrepresented and maybe even underfunded. And
yes, for sure.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, you break your leg, you want to get a cast on it as soon as possible, because you don't want to have a crooked leg at the end of the day. And even that is sometimes a challenge. And mental health is way worse than a broken leg. So yeah,
I don't think people understand. I think it's getting better, like you said. I think there's so many people that don't understand the work that's being done, that has progressed, the things we can do to treat mental illness and mental health. And there are so many things that can be done now. But like you said, you have free healthcare. In the States, it's extremely expensive. And the majority of people have to pay out of pocket if they want mental health therapy. And the majority of people can't afford to do that. I'm in a privileged situation. I've seen a therapist 3 different times in my life. And, when I was younger, somehow I just made it work, financially. Now I'm in a position where I can afford to pay for it. And so I choose to, because for me, it's just, there's nothing bad about seeing a therapist. Like, I can only see good things. Even if you're like doing well in your life, it's still like beneficial to see a therapist,
It doesn't hurt. I mean, you go to the dentist to see if your teeth are still all good. And although they don't hurt, like every time, oh, we have a buckle here. Oh, like there's always something. Everybody has something. And
Right.
another with mental health, that it's affordable. I work for my province, Manitoba's government. And they actually offer free mental health. And when I was going through my divorce, for example, I got free counseling. And then I had the sad thing to do, like I had to fly to Germany to say goodbye to my oldest sister because she was dying. And I saw the therapist. It was 2 days. It was a couple of hours, but it helped me so much just to be prepared for this life-changing situation. And just these few little tips, do this, do this, do this. And that just set something free up here, like, you know what, I'm prepared.
Yeah, I think you are so right. Like you make a really good point. Like you said, twice a year you go to the dentist for a checkup. Like, why aren't we doing that? That makes complete sense to me. Even if you just need, you're going through a job loss or just some event happens in your life that's traumatic on any scale, just to have somebody to go to speak about what's going on, to get an outside perspective in terms of how to deal with it. To me, there's just so many common sense ways we could help each other out in society. And I don't know, the United States just, as soon as you try to fund anything, they yell socialism at you and they tell you you're trying to, I don't know what the word is, that you're trying to somehow like enable people, like, or not. I don't know.
What really threw me off was talking about like socialism. Obamacare, terrible name for this affordable healthcare app. Sorry to say it. It sounds terrible. But this is the same thing that we have in Germany. Everybody pays a percentage of their income. And at the end, everybody gets the same treatment. If you earn $100, you pay €1, or 100 euros a month, you pay €1. If you earn 500,000, you pay 5,000. You need a wheelchair? Both of you get one. This was invented in the 1800s, in the late 1800s in Germany, this social system. Same with the retirement fund, like the pension fund. If everybody puts a little bit in, doesn't have to be much. At the end, we can all live off of this. But then when it says like, wow, Obamacare has to go, I don't want to pay for drug addicts, blah, blah.
Well, essentially what it is it's just a larger insurance plan. Right now in our country, you have companies sponsoring insurance where all you're doing is increasing the pool, which actually makes it more sustainable because you have a larger pool of people to work with to help people out. So it's just a larger insurance plan that's sponsored by the country instead of your company. So it's not tied to a job. So you don't have to worry about insurance when you leave said job. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me that people aren't on board with it. But the one thing I wanted to mention that you said about Obamacare is it actually isn't called Obamacare. It's called the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, I know.
The right coined it Obamacare to demonize it so that the public would turn against it and not vote for it, essentially.
That's what I mean. Terrible name, but this is how even we got in here in Canada. Like with the free healthcare that we have here, I mean, you get what you pay for. You get basic coverage. If you want extra, I have an extra insurance, for example, for my glasses and for extra dental work. But I have a coworker who just was complaining about the cost of the birth of his kid. His car got towed because he was parking in no parking zone. That was the most issue. He was complaining about that. Everything else was free. The baby was born with no cost to anyone.
Right.
And especially something like this, birth should be free. I mean, sorry. It's something you can't pick and choose. Like, I mean, if I fall over when I'm mountain biking and I break my face, well, that's my own stupid accident. But getting born or being born is, yeah. And
yeah.
At the end, we have to. This is just this. We have to find, especially the states have to find a system that we all look out for each other. We all have like this is. But this is what you say, socialism. Everybody pitches in and everybody takes what they need. Communism, demon communism. People don't even know what communism means when they say that.
No, they don't know what socialism means. They just know it's a bad word.
And you know what? Don't get me wrong. Communism is a fantastic political thing. There's only one factor you shouldn't take into this, to put into the thing, the human.
Your reaction to Uvalde. The reason being that seems to be the catalyst for potential change here. Finally,
well, I just read the numbers today. How many shootings there are since the beginning of 2021? That is like seriously, how many car accidents were there? What was so terrible? What really hits the nerve of the planet, I think, was that this individual, I don't want to even call him a person, this individual killed school children. And he was going for school children, like at that age. They have these witness accounts from girls that put blood in their face to say that they're dead. At that age, I was playing with Legos. I don't know what you were playing with. I don't know, Barbies or something. But I had other problems than concealing myself between my dead schoolmates. And this is what made it so terrible, that he really on purpose killed. And then it's school children. And then another thing that came up was the police reaction. That they showed up with military gear, with helmets on, and did nothing. And according to the press, they just went through training through that. There were a lot of mistakes that the police made. And sorry to say it, but where were all these heroes with their concealed carry permit? Why didn't they storm in there and clean out that place?
Right. Well, and parents were actually trying to get in. They were arresting parents and detaining them.
Terrible.
Because they were trying to get in, and they said that they were interfering with a police situation or whatever you call it. And I mean, it's crazy to think about. There were clearly a lot of breakdowns in Uvalde that caused that tragedy. But, then in the meantime, I think a couple days later, there was another gunman out in maybe Maryland. And then some woman actually did pull out a gun and shoot him before he hurt anybody. So that's the myth of the good guy with a gun stopping a bad guy with a gun that actually played out in real time. But how often does that happen? It doesn't stop most shootings. Like, that was a fluke. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that argument, because the NRA likes to spout that as one of their talking points to increase gun ownership. And
I hear this lots when people say, "Oh, I would have stopped this." Of course you would have stopped this. Like the same way you would have played in that football game, because you see everything from a distance. I hear this lots that people want to be the hero, run into situations. But first of all, gunshots. If you're ever in a situation where somebody starts shooting in an enclosed space, gunshots are extremely loud. They're not coming through a little TV speaker. It's extremely loud. You get a sonic boom. There's like a pressure wave of air that hits you. Then, of course, you don't know what's going on. You're disorientated. This is something that you are not accustomed to. All of a sudden, people start crying and running. You still don't know what's going on. There's somebody who's very determined to pick and choose people that he or she wants to end lives of other people. Then let's say you are a concealed carry person. Then you pull out your gun. Who's the shooter? Where is he? People are running, screaming. Then let's say you find the person. You see, oh, there he is. How good are you as a shooter? Shooting is not as easy as it looks on TV. Everybody's a John Wayne. I've seen people who came to our gun range with the most expensive firearms because they thought that makes them a good shooter. They couldn't hit the side of a barn factory. They just think I thought this gun is so good. You put a laser pointer on it. The laser pointer just shows you that you're probably on the verge of Parkinson because you're shaking so much. But everybody thinks they're the hero after it. And I would say if you ever hear gunshots, run. Run as fast as you can away from it. It's none of your business to stop that shooter. There's people who get paid money, SWAT teams, to do that on a daily basis, and they have extra life insurance for that. Because these SWAT units, they have shooting practice before they have their first cup of coffee. And they know what they're doing. They can slow down their heart rate if they want to. So what I'm saying is like to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun if he or she knows how to overlook a situation and to shoot properly. Then do it. If not, get out.
Yeah, but that's not a person that's trained to handle high stress situations either. And you don't know how you're going to react in that situation.
Yeah, but this is why I don't like this when they say we should arm teachers.
Right.
Why? It's not their job. So what? Mental health. What if you have a teacher who's losing their marbles? And all of a sudden you have an armed individual who's completely, we were both in high school. We always tried to poke the bear. Of course you did. What if you have one who's like on the edge of the limit, pulls out and shoots you right in the face because he doesn't like your attitude? And then what? So you have a teacher who gets paid not very much money. They are there to teach your kids, to look after your kids, not to annoy the parents, and all of a sudden they have to be SWAT units and have to get shooting training? How often do they train? Because shooting is not easy. You have to practice it. This is nonsense.
I agree.
That gets me going because everybody, I hear this so many times when people say, "Oh, I would have done this, I would have done that." No, you wouldn't. Because especially the bad shooters with the big guns, they always think they are the big heroes. Let's be going.
Well, I had a couple more just personal questions, your personal thoughts on guns. And I know we kind of started with this, but I just want to get your personal thoughts on how you think about the idea of rights in your country versus the idea of responsibilities as a citizen. And, especially with your experience in Germany and Canada versus in America, and what that, dichotomy looks like to you. Because we're so rights oriented in America.
Yes, like I said, I would say it's a privilege to be able to handle a firearm or to own one, because you have to, like you said, with driving a vehicle, you have to have the capabilities to be able to drive a vehicle. If you're too dumb to follow basic laws, you don't get your license. If you break the law constantly, you lose your license. So for me, there is no right to a firearm. You have a right to defend yourself. I would say that, but to a certain extent, within your means. I wouldn't shoot at anyone who tries to steal my lawnmower. It's not worth it. Why would I kill someone over a lawnmower? This is the castle doctrine, or whatever you call it there in the States. But here it's more of a privilege. There's a different culture here. Rifles are more like for hunting here in the first place. Canada was never interested in self-defending. It was mostly like, we were the dominion of the British Empire. We still have the Queen Elizabeth on our $20 bill. And we were most concerned we needed guns to get something to eat or not being eaten by something bigger. And this is why this is still a privilege here. Because if you want to eat something, if you want to shoot something to eat it, gotta know how to do this. So it's not a right. Learn it, and then you can do this. Same with firearms. Get a license. Get a firearms license. Maybe you learned something you didn't know. When I did my research on becoming an instructor, there were so many YouTube videos from the States where it says, "So you bought your first gun. Now let me tell you how to use it." And so like, what? It should be the other way around. Learn how to use it, then buy it. Oh. And there's so many little things about firearms in general. Like when I see, when I watch movies, how this is things that I can't unsee anymore. Like I see actors having the finger on the trigger while they're walking around with a gun. That's a big no-no. You keep the trigger out of the finger out of the trigger guard. I think like they have $1 million actor and nobody told him to keep the finger off the trigger. Come on. So
right.
No, but what I'm saying is like the United States, in my opinion, should probably come up with a federal licensing and training thing. It doesn't have to be super rigorous, but just make sure that you have an eye on who has a license and who doesn't, and who has the right to get a license and the privilege to have and use a firearm.
And put it right on their driver's license, just like we do, because we have IDs, and then you have operators licenses, and then you have gun licenses, yes. Right? It makes sense.
For me, it's two separate. I have two separate cards. Like it's the driver's license and the gun license, but the card. But if you say like that would be something in the States, like you can put on there, took the safety course. Can even be online. But as long as you really go through this process, read, just like understand what basic firearm safety is. And then you don't think it's that easy anymore because everybody thinks they're John Wayne.
Right.
We stray left and right here with our talk, actually. So,
no, that's okay. That's okay.
But it is such a tricky thing. And another thing is with living in the country and compared to the city. Winnipeg is our urban center. I had to go there for a meeting, and I was talking to a coworker about our rifles and handguns that we have. All of a sudden, a lady that I was dealing with for 6 years, you guys have guns? Yeah, why? Are you dangerous? What makes us dangerous now that you hear that we have guns? We're still the same guys. We follow certain rules. She didn't understand that. She never left the city. We only have one big city, so we call Winnipeg the city. So,
right.
Yeah, and they have a highway around it, the perimeter, and they don't know what happens outside of the perimeter. So it's such a tricky thing, and you have to please so many people. But in my opinion, the United States have to implement something. If you can buy a rifle without any proof that you know how to use it at the age of 18, before you can buy your first alcohol, I mean that's dumb. Sorry, that is dumb.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, with that, I'm trying this yes. thing at the end of our my interviews with people. Just a fun Q&A, yes. just to kind of know a little bit more about you and share something with the rest of our audience. So what are you most proud of up to this point in your life? Like, what's something that you're really proud of?
When I left Germany 2008, I was so scared. I didn't know what happened. I went into a completely new culture. 14 years later, I introduced myself into this culture and this community where I'm living here in Dauphin, Manitoba. I'm so happy that I did this. I'm so proud of myself that people recognize me now. Like I go through town and people know me. I don't know them, but it's so nice. And I'm so proud that my integration into this culture into the Canadian culture, coming from a completely different culture. There's still things that you can't get out of me. Punctuality is one thing. Oh, Canadians are not punctual. I'm very proud of that. That I made myself being such a good part of this community that I live in.
So Canadians aren't known to be punctual?
Well, some of them are, but it's like sometimes, yeah. In Germany, if you're 2 minutes too late, you're like, then don't even come. Don't even bother coming. And for me, it's still this feeling, if I'm late, if you're waiting for me, I'm wasting your time. So don't do that to me. And yeah, but most of the
You and I would get along. You and I would get along because I'm very punctual as well.
I'm so happy that Google Maps has this function. When do I have to leave to be at a certain point at a certain time? I love that.
So what is your biggest regret?
My regret is, like, we always have regrets in the past. I listened to some not wrong advice, but I shouldn't have listened to some advice about my choices that I made in life. Now it's like, for example, career choices. I would be a completely different person right now if I would have done what I was planning on doing, but I had people to talk me out of it. I don't know if my life would have been better or worse, but sometimes I think, why did I do this? Like, getting influence. Right. Now I would just tell the same person, yeah, I can't say that. It's probably, I keep this clean.
Now you just follow your inner intuition more as a result.
Exactly. But I think that has something to do with age too.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure. What is your favorite quote? Do you have a favorite quote?
Well, I have one thing that my uncle told me shortly before he passed away of lung cancer. You can't really transcribe it into English. It sounds more philosophical in German, but like, the morning begins in the middle of the night. If you like, it's really hard to say. That means, like, I was at a point in my life where university didn't go so well. Everything was dumb at the moment, and I remember it was New Year's Eve, and I called him. He was alone, and I was half in the back, and I just called him, wished him a happy New Year, and then he told me this. He said, "How's the university?" I said, "Oh, it stinks." He said, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, don't worry about it. The morning begins in the middle of the night. You'll get through this." I was half drunk, and this really stuck with me. Like, seriously, I still remember that. I carry that with me. Nothing
What's
is as
the
bad
German way to say it?
In dunkler Nacht beginnt ein neuer Morgen. In the dark night, the new morning begins.
I'll have to think on that one. That is philosophical.
Yeah, especially for my uncle, who was such a blunt guy sometimes, so blunt.
I'm definitely going to think on that.
Yeah.
What's your favorite song?
I don't really have a favorite song. Another thing that you couldn't have told me, like, if you tell 15 years ago, if you would tell me, hey, there's a point in your life where you actually enjoy country music. Yeah, no. Like, I really like country music. We have a country festival here in Dauphin, Manitoba. July 1st, if you want to come, you're more than welcome. We have big stars coming. We had Reba McEntire here. But I like listening to country music. I don't have specific music. I like oldies. I don't have a special song. Let's put it this way.
Okay. It's a hard question. I don't really either. I always say the Louis Armstrong song, What a Wonderful World, just because I feel like it encapsulates how I feel about life. So
it is a beautiful song. I gotta say, it's a really nice song that covers everything. Like, what a wonderful world. Yeah.
And do you have a favorite book?
I don't read much, but I like to read biographies. I gotta admit, I'm listening to audiobooks mostly. But I like doing work. That's really nice when I'm working on my analysis. Headphones on and then listening to autobiographies or historical things, history stuff. So that's what I really like to read. And I learned a lot about, like, German history. And what I really like is like how one thing in the past changed the whole world when you look at it now. So this is stuff that I like to read.
Yeah, that's really cool. Cool way to look at it. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm very excited that you messaged me and wanted to, because I think it's important to hear more voices, especially from outside our country. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
You can find all of my Single White Female episodes on any app where you listen to your podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. Thank you for listening.